Hey y'all, Stan, StanHunter.com. Let's look at how I made Carseat. Here's the image I made in Photoshop. So I'm printing the first half of my transfer here for Carseat. I've already reversed this image because it does have some words on there that would be backwards if I didn't revert it. So this is half of my transfer for Carseat coming out of my Epson printer. So here's my transfer. I cut out this edge here. I tried to place the edges where different subjects kind of meet so you won't see the transition line as much. So I've painted another layer of gesso on the top of this. That gives the transfer a better bite to stick to. So once I've placed this where I want it, I'm going to stabilize it with my gesso bottle. I'm putting down some paper towels so when I paint this, I won't get the medium on top of the transfer underneath it. Because if you get transfer medium on top of this transfer, you will not be able to wash off the paper. My GAC 500. Okay, now I got to put some on the transfer itself. So once this is down, this kind of anchors where I want the transfer to be. And now I can go over here, put down the rest of the transfer. And this does not dry very fast, so I can probably just go ahead and paint this whole thing right now. A couple places here I've been getting some on top of it. That's bad. I'm going to use some paper towel. I'm going to press this all down. So now that this is dried, I'm going to dissolve the paper with just some water. So this paper is made of methyl cellulose, so it dissolves in water. You can buy this online. Most of this paper is a thinner layer than this. This is about half as thick. It comes in 8 by 11 sheets. You can get it just called dissolving paper or whatever, and you can use that. I started out with that, but this is more of a commercial grade. They use it for welding actually in pipelines, and you have to buy it in a bigger roll. I get it from Zoro.com, Z-O-R-O. But I like this paper a lot better because it doesn't fall apart as easily. I can do bigger things with it. With the thinner paper, sometimes you have to be careful you don't stick your fingers through or whatever when you're putting down the transfer medium. After this water settles in a little bit, I'm going to start brushing it off. So to brush this off, I use a very soft brush so I don't risk injuring the transfer underneath the paper when it dissolves. And you can see what a nice transfer you're getting here. See, here's another spot where I had some media on top, and so it's harder to get the paper off because the media is kind of gluing it down. There it goes. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this GAC 500 from Golden. Once I get most of this paper off, I'll go back with the brush one more time and try to get the last bit of paper fibers off, and then I'll cover it with gloss media. So now I can go back and do one more brushing just to try to get anything that's left on here. And again, you have to be careful not to push into your transfer because you might scratch the ink that has been transferred onto the canvas. Whatever's left will kind of turn gray when it dries. So that will clear up a little bit when you put gloss media on top. So now that this is dry, I'm going to go ahead and put some gloss media on top just to protect it. I want to push this into any remaining paper fibers to help clear them up, and then I go back and I kind of do some brushwork to kind of correlate with the picture a little bit. So I've cut this so the two pieces will fit together. But before I'm going to put this transfer down, I need to put some matte media over the areas where the gloss media. Gloss media for some reason doesn't seem to provide such a good tooth for the transfers to stick to. So I decided I want to extend this strap on over to the edge. So I'm just going to paint acrylic on there. Acrylic covers up the canvas a lot faster. I always paint around the side. I'm going to blend the acrylic a little bit into the printed area. So I'm going to do this background in two pieces. One is going to be a lower part from 9 inches. So I use matte media and put down my... Now I'm going to coat this with gloss media to protect it. And I find this works better if I kind of roll the brush. Now that the tape is off, I'm going to put another layer of gloss media to secure the edges. So I've taped off this copper again so I can put my molding paste on top. I did need to put matte media over the tape edges on this because this molding paste is not going to go underneath the tape. And I'll go ahead and put it over on this side too, I think now. So this doesn't have to be too thick, but I'm going to use that coat to scratch through it and reveal the copper beneath it. And kind of use a tape for a register on this stick. Okay, and now I need to put a little bit more paste up here on this top spot. And then I need to take this tape up pretty quickly because this stuff will dry on top of the tape. I just need to put a layer of matte media on this tape edge. I'm going to do the top background now. And I'm going to make this like a light blue, so I'm going to put a little glazing fluid on here first. This lets the acrylic paint spread out a little bit better. I think I might need a little bit of white on it. On these gallery cameras, you just got to make sure you paint the side as well. And if I put this in a floater frame, then you're going to see the side of the camera. So I've taped this down because I'm going to put some sand on here with some soft gel. Just need to go down the sides a little bit. Now on these copper areas where I've got some copper torn off, I'm going to go ahead and make myself some copper paint. This is kind of a luster. One is called rose gold and one is called copper. So I found if I mix both of these together, they look about like the color of the foil. So if I've taped out this background with 1-inch strips here, and I'm going to put some sand on top of this. So I'm mixing up equal parts of these three colors. Because I've used this before on top of this light blue color. It looks kind of nice. You can buy these colored sands at simple places like Michael's or wherever, any kind of craft store usually has these colored sands. So I'm just going to stick this sand down with some matte media and put this on kind of thick. Once this matte media dries, I'm just going to pour off the excess sand. Just trying to put a little bit on the sides here. With a floater frame, you will see the sides, and it's nice to have the whatever's on the front of the canvas going around the side. So I'm pulling this tape off before the matte media is completely dry, so I don't have any issues with the edges. I'm going to go ahead and pour off my sand here and see what we got. Okay, so I just need to put some gloss media on top of that to hold down the sand. So I've marked off a couple of spots here to paste some plywood on the back of this. So I've sanded these boards off a little bit, and I'm going to put them in these marked spots. Since I put an encaustic on the other side, I need to have something that will support the encaustic so the canvas doesn't move around a lot under the wax. So I'm going to let that dry a little bit before I do the encaustics on the other side. So I've put this over a couple books to help support the boards on the back while they're still drying. And I'm going to start putting a mask on top of these two areas where the caustic is going to go. And this is basically some contact paper like you get for your coverage or something. Put a little matte media on the edges just to make sure I got a good seal on those. So in order to put encaustic on top of a canvas, I need to put down a encaustic gesso. So this encaustic gesso basically protects the things beneath it from getting so hot. Now I need to let that dry. So I've set up my encaustic materials here, which in this case is just some medium and some red color. Melted them at 200 degrees, and I think we're ready to go. I'm going to heat up my encaustic gesso a little bit. I'm heating up the encaustic gesso a little bit so it accepts the wax a little bit. That's still kind of warm, so I think it can accept the red coat that I want to put on top of it. I'm going to put a pretty thick layer on this because I want this to stand out quite a bit. I need to fuse that a little. So I'm going to scrape just to smooth it out some. I'm going to have to put a transfer into the wax. But I need to heat up this wax a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to put this on here. And this will allow the ink on the paper to get embedded into the wax, and then I can use my water to take off the paper, and that should leave the ink on top of the wax. The nice thing about doing transfers into the wax is I don't need to wait for the GAC 500 to dry. Okay, I'm going to start taking off this contact paper. That wax is pretty thick. So I've taken off the contact paper here around the red square. I might need to trim that up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and take off the paper here on top of the wax. I can take off the rest of this paper off of there. And you can see you get a pretty good image on the wax as well as you would on a can. In fact, it's a little bit better. Now you have to be careful if you get this gesso wet, it starts to dissolve. What I need to do is try to heat this up a little bit without burning off the image. Don't want to make that too thick, but that will protect the layer underneath it. I'm going to let this cool down some and scrape it a little bit to clear it up. I'm just kind of scraping down a little bit on this red thing to kind of smooth out the edges. This is actually a pottery looping tool, but it works good for acoustics. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and try to take my contact paper off. So the good news is I haven't burned up my canvas so far. I need to find a corner here. So I've finished up my encaustic areas here. I brought this back inside to do my oil painting. So I want to make sure I put a layer of gloss media on top of these sand areas before I start working with my oil paint. This will just protect the layer of the sand so it doesn't get rubbed off or anything. So here's Carseat with the acrylic areas finished, and also the encaustic areas here, the red spot and this half circle here. And so what I need to do now is go ahead and paint oil on top of the transfer to kind of bring the colors out more. So here I'm pretty much finished with the oil painting, and I just need to take a picture of it. Alright, thanks for watching. Sign up for my newsletter at stanunser.com.